Hello, my name is Bridgette Outten, and I am with the Right Vision Group Incorporated, where we help nonprofits and small businesses get their stories in the news. So, today we are going to talk about a blog topic, and this is one of my first videos. I'm really excited because now I'm officially video blogging. Check me out. So, what we're going to talk about today is what to do when your news gets pushed out of the news. So, briefly, let me explain what that means. You've pitched the reporter, you've gotten the interview, and you've actually gotten the story, in that you know it's going to air on a certain day, you know it's going to run in the newspaper on a certain day, you have gotten whatever it is that you need. But a bigger event has pushed your story out of the news. So it is quite literally taken the spot of your story. So, what to do? I'll give you an example of this actually happening. I was covering a story about a greyhound rescue. So we had gone out to the greyhound farm, myself and the photographer. We had actually gone out, we had interviewed the people, we had taken pictures, we had just done all of this great stuff. It was going to be an amazingly cute story. And as we were getting ready to wrap up, we noticed that the wind had really picked up out at this greyhound farm. So, of course, by the time we get back to the office, we find out that there's a windstorm going on in our area, and it was remnants of a hurricane, which at the time I believe was Hurricane Ike. So, the remnants of this hurricane had sent this huge wind system up to our area, and it had felled trees and knocked down power lines and just all of these different things. So, needless to say, the Greyhound story didn't run. Not only was it pushed out of the news because of the windstorm, but because the power went out, we had to produce the newspaper in a special way. We didn't even have a regular edition of the newspaper that next day. So, which, for that particular organization, I could understand it could be a bit disappointing. But all is not lost. If your story doesn't air, isn't broadcast, isn't published, because it is knocked out of the news by another event, there are three things that you can do to ensure that eventually you will get the coverage that you would like. The first thing you do is call up the reporter and say, hey, I noticed that with all of the craziness that was going on with X event, that we didn't get the story, that the story didn't run. So the first thing you do is call the reporter, let them know that you're aware that the story didn't run, and see what you may be able to do to actually have that story run at a later date. So call the reporter and say, hey, I understand you got pretty busy and our story didn't run. So what can we do about that? The second thing you need to do is be ready with new information. It may be a week later before you can get in touch with the reporter, depending on the scope of whatever story came up. It could be a week, 2 weeks later, however long. But make sure that you're ready to give them updated information. So you can say, hey, well, since the last time we spoke, we did get that new shipment, or the program that we talked about has actually moved a little further to being implemented. So you make sure that you give them updated information. The last thing you can do when you contact the reporter to try to recover your story after it was unfortunately pushed out of the news is to recap what you talked to the reporter about the first time. Don't assume that the reporter still has their notes. If it was some disaster or something that happened or something really big, the reporter probably needs to recover a little bit himself. So be willing to have the reporter come back out, recap whatever it is that you talked about, whatever information that you had to begin with, for the photographer to come back out and take pictures. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is contact the reporter and say, hey, I know that this was really stressful. What can we do to get this story to move forward, and be very nice about it. The second thing you can do is to update your story in any way possible. If there's anything new, if there's anything changed since the reporter was going to initially cover the story. And then the last thing you can do is to actually recap what you talked about in the first interview with the reporter, and any new information that's going on with your organization. in that time period from the time that your story was pushed out of the news until now. Okay, so this has been your weekly media tip with Bridgette Outten and the Right Vision Group. See you next time.